The moment the millionaire opened the kitchen cabinet and saw the empty food containers, his face turned cold. For weeks, food had been disappearing from his house: bread, fruit, leftovers from expensive dinners. Today he finally caught the culprit. Standing there in silence was his quiet maid, her hands trembling, her eyes lowered, clutching a small container. Without listening to a single explanation, anger rushed through him like a storm. In that moment, he believed only one thing: that she had betrayed his trust, and within minutes he fired her. But what he discovered when he secretly followed her home would shatter his heart forever. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Brightly Kindness. Your support helps spread stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. The millionaire, a man who had built his fortune through years of relentless work, believed strongly in discipline and honesty. His mansion stood tall and beautiful on the edge of the city, filled with luxury that most people could only dream of. Marble floors, grand windows, expensive furniture, everything in his life reflected success. Yet despite all his wealth, his world had grown strangely quiet over the years. His wife had passed away long ago, his children lived abroad, and the mansion often felt more like an empty museum than a home. The maid had been working there for almost 2 years. She was known to be quiet, hardworking, and respectful. But lately, the missing food had made him suspicious, and when he caught her holding that small container of bread and soup, his anger erased any memory of her loyalty. He dismissed her immediately. She didn't argue, didn't cry loudly, didn't beg. She simply nodded, wiped a tear quietly from her cheek, and walked out of the mansion carrying a small, worn-out bag. Something about her silence lingered in the millionaire's mind. It wasn't the reaction of someone who had been caught stealing for selfish reasons, but pride kept him from reconsidering. Still, curiosity, and something deeper he could not name, pushed him to grab his car keys. Without letting her see him, he decided to follow her. The maid walked a long distance under the burning afternoon sun. The millionaire slowly drove behind at a distance, watching her through the windshield. She left the polished streets of the wealthy neighborhood and entered parts of the city he had rarely visited. The roads became rough, the houses smaller and older. Eventually, she turned into a narrow dirt path leading toward a poor settlement at the edge of town. The millionaire parked far away and followed on foot, confused about why someone would live in such harsh conditions. When she finally stopped, it was in front of a tiny, crumbling house made of mud bricks and rusted metal sheets. The door creaked as she opened it. From outside, the millionaire could hear weak voices inside. What he saw next froze him in place. Inside the dim room were 3 small children sitting on the floor and an elderly woman lying on a thin mattress. The children looked thin, their clothes worn and faded. The moment they saw the maid, their faces lit up with relief. She knelt down and opened the container she had taken from the mansion. Carefully, she divided the bread and soup into small portions, making sure each child received some. She gave the smallest child the largest piece, gently brushing the child's hair back with the tenderness of a mother. Then she carried a small portion to the elderly woman, lifting her head and feeding her slowly. The millionaire stood at the doorway, his chest tightening with every second. The scene was so painfully simple, yet so powerful. This woman he had accused of theft wasn't feeding herself. She was feeding hungry children and a sick mother who had no one else to care for them. As he watched quietly, he realized something else. The maid herself didn't eat. After giving food to everyone, she simply smiled at the children and told them to eat slowly so it would last longer. Her stomach must have been empty too, but she hid her hunger behind gentle patience. The millionaire felt a wave of shame crash over him. The expensive dinners he hosted at his mansion often ended with half the food thrown away. Plates of untouched meals were discarded without a second thought. Yet here was a woman risking her job just to bring scraps to people who truly needed them. Tears welled up in his eyes before he even realized it. He stepped forward slowly, his polished shoes crunching against the dry dirt. The maid looked up, startled to see him standing there. For a moment, Fear crossed her face, as if she expected him to yell again or accuse her further. But the millionaire did something she never expected. He broke down in tears. Standing there in the doorway of that tiny home, the wealthy man who owned mansions and luxury cars cried like a child. The weight of his mistake crushed his pride. He had judged her without understanding her story, without seeing the invisible struggles she carried every day. In that moment, the distance between wealth and poverty, between power and vulnerability, became painfully clear. The next day, everything changed. The millionaire returned not with anger but with compassion. He offered the maid her job back with a higher salary. He arranged medical treatment for the elderly woman, enrolled the children in school, and ensured they would never go hungry again. But more importantly, something inside him shifted forever. His mansion no longer felt like a place to hide from the world. Instead, it became a place where he started helping others, donating food, supporting families in need, and remembering that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in kindness. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion can reveal the